Hello YouTube, welcome back to Kind Heart Homestead. My name is Ben, and I'm here on our off-grid property in the mountains of Virginia. Today, we have a bit of a short video. I'm trying to finish up this solar shed project, and all that's really left is the trim on the inside, and then of course, our big solar array. That's gonna have to wait because I'm still healing from a back injury, and these 80-pound bags of concrete are no joke. So I'm gonna take you inside and show you how I'm going to finish off the bathroom door trim. So stick around and I'll be right back. Well, let's go ahead and jump right into it. This is the bathroom door. It's primed but not painted, and we've had a hole in the door where the doorknob is supposed to be. And that's not ideal privacy, and also Cedar knows how to open and close doors fairly easily. So to prevent him from getting access, I'm gonna go ahead and install this doorknob. It matches our hardware in the shower. It's a brushed nickel finish, and it's a generic enough shape to where we can put a child safety knob over it, where Cedar won't have the grip strength to actually grab and turn the knob. Here is the finished installation. You see I have the strike plate there, and now let's move on to the front door. I really like the handles that I chose for the front and the back exterior doors. However, the lever style knobs make it very easy for Cedar to open the door. And because of these heat waves we've had, and our air conditioning is running all the time, it's not a very good time to have doors left open. And also, since I have power tools, blades, and all sorts of stuff sitting around because it's a work in progress, it's better practice to be able to have a door that can stay shut where our toddler can't get in and potentially hurt himself or mess up the projects that I'm working on. So I'm replacing this with an identical doorknob to the bathroom, except this has the black finish instead of brushed nickel, and it's not a lockable doorknob. The bathroom does need privacy, so that's why that has a lock, but a tip that I learned years ago is to get rid of lockable doorknobs. That way you never risk accidentally locking yourself out without a key. So we have the keypad entry for the deadbolt, and that's the sole lock on the door. And here's just a quick close-up of the toddler-proof doorknob covers. As you can see here, as long as you have a generic round shape, you can fit the cover over it. Even though these are kind of a smaller form factor knob, it still fits under the cover. So let's get back to the bathroom door. I mentioned that I was going to work on the bathroom door trim for this video, and one of the prerequisites is to have shims ready to go so that when I go to nail the trim, I'm able to make sure everything is level and plumb and true and all that good stuff. And in order to save myself several packs of shims, I'm actually going to cut some scrap zip sheathing. It's about the exact thickness that I need. If I was to do this with regular shims, I'm sure I would eat through several packs and it would be a complete hassle. So basically I'm just cutting a bunch of strips that are just wide enough to be concealed between the door framing and the door jamb. So I'll show you what I mean right now. When I purchased this door, it was advertised as a pre-hung door with the trim already attached. That would mean that the trim on the inside of the door and the outside of the door would be intact and ready to go. And the way that typically works is once you get the box home and unbundle it, you can essentially decouple the inside and the outside from each other and then put it back together with your framing in between. That way it'll conceal all the edges of your drywall. It turns out that this door framing was a bit too thick. I essentially have the same thickness as a 2x6 wall here, and even though it wasn't advertised as such, the pre-hung door that I purchased would only fit around a 2x4 framed wall. So I had to get a bit creative. We decided to just abandon the trim that it came with for the living room side of the door, and that's where you see me applying these shims now. I'm going to use the same 1x4 stock that I'm using to trim out the windows. I'm still going to use the factory trim that it came with on the inside. The bathroom doesn't necessarily have to match, but I would like the living room, laundry room area to look consistent. So after installing a couple shims just to bring the zip sheathing out to the right plane, I then secure each of the zip scraps with a couple finishing nails that are about 2 inches long. That way, it's not going to stick out on the other side of the 2x4 where I have some electrical wires mounted. I'm continuously checking my 5-foot level just to make sure everything is straight. In this zoomed out view, you can now see the full plane made up by all of the zip sheathing scraps that I've nailed to the 2x4s. I ripped this 1x4 down to the proper depth off camera, but when I repeat the process for the other side of the door, I'm actually going to show you a close-up of how I use the table saw, but first I need to cut the board down to length. So this length corresponds to the height of the door opening. And now I adjust my table saw to the exact depth that I need to fill with the 1x4. I don't recall exactly what that depth was. It does vary, and in my case, it actually varied from one side to the other. So this one is actually a bit thicker than the other side. But whenever I hang doors, I like to attach the hinge side directly to the vertical stud, and then use all of my shims for the other side that doesn't hold as much weight. So as you can see here, I don't actually need to use any sort of shims to make sure that this is in the same plane as the door. I'm using finishing nails to attach it straight to the same 2x4 that the hinges are also attached to. And as always, I hold up my 5-foot level just to prove that this is a plumb door jamb. I repeat the process for the top of the door jamb. I first ripped a board to a similar depth as the left and the right sides of the door jamb, and you can see a pretty significant gap there on the top, but using some shims, I'm able to bring it down to the exact height that it needs to be. A lot of times, if I'm only using a couple very skinny shims, I'll use a razor blade to score the shim and then just break it off with the strength of my hand. But because I'm using a thicker sized shim, I need to use my oscillating tool to make sure that everything is cut off flush with the drywall. That way, when I put the casing trim around, it's not bubbling out over the drywall with a gap between the two pieces. One way I achieve this is by angling the blade towards the cavity. That way I'm actually cutting the shim shorter than the drywall. That way there's absolutely no risk at all of the casing being past the drywall. The only thing I have to worry about is scuffing the finished surface of the trim and the painted drywall. These 1x4 pieces of trim completely conceal the gaps that contained all of the shims that I was working on just a minute ago. So it doesn't really matter if the pre-hung door is centered or not. Any of those mistakes are going to be hidden. Now it's time to complete the casing by installing the top piece. We decided to go with a farmhouse style approach, which requires the top piece to overhang beyond the outer boundaries of the left and the right pieces of casing. In our specific case, we decided to overhang it exactly 1 inch, which means I have to cut this top piece 2 inches longer than the left to right measurement. Go ahead and take a look at this close-up and let me know down in the comments how good you think it looks. If you're a novice carpenter, I definitely recommend you choose this style for your DIY door or window trims because it doesn't require any miter cuts. I told you that video was going to be short, so if you liked the content, please go ahead and like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and I'll see you back here next time on Kind Heart Homestead when we continue the trim process for the remaining doors and windows of the solar shed build.